When Donald Trump ordered U.S. immigration and customs enforcement agents into airports across the country, it was presented as a solution to chaos. But what followed raised even more questions than answers. During a tense congressional hearing, a senior official from the Transportation Security Administration was pressed with a blunt question. Would you rather properly fund your agency or have ICE agents standing around airports with little to do while detaining people in front of their families? The official couldn't give a clear response, and Congressman Dan Goldman had to repeat the same question again and again, 5 times, just to expose the silence. That moment wasn't just awkward, it was revealing, because at the same time,
Gentleman yields back, and I recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Goldman, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. McNeil, would you rather have a fully funded TSA or ICE agents assisting TSA at airports during a shutdown?
I would like to have all the hardworking men and women of the Department of Homeland Security be paid for the work.
That wasn't my question. Would you rather have your agency fully funded so everyone can be paid and retroactively, or would you rather have ICE officers assisting you at airports?
If DHS is funded, TSA will be funded.
And would you rather have that, or would you rather have the ICE agents who are at airports right now helping you?
I think that if we don't want ICE agents
Can you
working
just
at
answer the
airports,
question?
we need to fund the departments.
It's not a complicated question, ma'am. It's not a complicated question. Would you rather have TSA funded or ICE agents helping your agency at the airport?
Paying the employees for the work that they are doing is also not a complicated question.
Well, I'm asking the questions, and you're answering them. And I would like to understand whether you are happy to have ICE agents there or whether you would rather have your own TSA officers there.
Under normal order, TSA would be performing our operations, and that is the ideal state. But I am also thankful for ICE for being there to help alleviate the burden that our workforce is feeling because we are in the 3rd shutdown of this fiscal year.
So you're happy to have ICE there, even though, as far as we can tell, there are videos of them standing around, yawning, eating candy bars, or tackling someone and arresting a woman in front of her daughter in the San Francisco airport. It seems to me like there's not a whole lot they're doing, but one thing that Mr. Homan said they were doing was checking identification. So do you have any concerns about passengers whose identification are being checked by ICE agents who are armed and may arrest them?
The ICE agents that are at the airports where we're seeing long lines are helping in a multitude of different ways. The credential authentication machine at the travel document checker is one thing that they are helping us operate, and they are doing that under TSA protocols and standard operating procedures.
So let's talk about this funding, because I hear my colleagues on the other side of the aisle wax poetic and melodramatic about how awful it is that your officers are not funded, are not able to work and get paid. And I want to be very clear. I 100% agree with that. The problem is that it is the Republicans who have voted down TSA funding over and over and over again. And you don't have to take my word for it. Let's listen to Senator Kennedy on Fox News, if we could play the clip.
The Democrats have offered to open up everything but ICE. Ted and I said, okay, let's accept their offer. And then at the same time, we would offer a bill for reconciliation where we don't need any Democratic votes to do whatever we wanted to do with ICE. And that way we're out of the shutdown and DHS is back open. We submitted that, Senator Cruthun submitted that to President Trump, as is his right. He said no. No deals with the Democrats. So we're back to square one.
No deals with the Democrats. The Democrats offered to open up everything but ICE, but Trump said no deals with the Democrats. That is a Republican senator. And that is why we are sitting here today with none of your agencies being funded. And I am sorry that you have to deal with this. I am sorry you are having to get by with no funding, with people having to literally leave their job so they can take another job and get paid. That is absolutely unacceptable, and you are right to be frustrated, and I am concerned about our homeland security. I am concerned about CISA. I am concerned about the damage it is causing. And that is why you ought to call your boss, President Trump, and tell him to take the offer that the Democrats made to fund all of your agencies. And I yield back.
Reports showed that ICE agents deployed during the shutdown were largely untrained for TSA duties and often limited to minor roles like directing lines or checking IDs, doing little to fix the real issue: unpaid TSA workers and collapsing staffing levels. Then the conversation shifted even further when evidence was presented from a Fox News segment, where even a Republican senator acknowledged that a key agreement, one that might have de-escalated a major conflict, had been abandoned. Suddenly, this wasn't just about airport lines or staffing decisions anymore. It became about priorities, decisions, and what happens when policy choices are made for optics instead of outcomes. And in that hearing room, when the same question had to be asked over and over without a real answer, it felt like, for a brief moment, the truth wasn't just questioned, it was cornered. She had no answer. Under oath, in front of Congress, she couldn't simply say that properly funding her agency was better than having ICE officers standing around airports with little direction. Because saying that would have clashed with the narrative being pushed, that this deployment was a solution, not a political move, and that Democrats were to blame for the chaos. But then Congressman Dan Goldman took it further than anyone else had. Right there in the hearing room, he referenced a televised clip in which a Republican senator admitted that Donald Trump had rejected a deal that could have resolved the situation. According to that account, Democrats had agreed to reopen the government while setting aside disagreements over ICE funding, but Republicans believed they could push through their own plan later, so Trump refused the compromise entirely. The result? TSA workers left unpaid, airports overwhelmed, and confusion growing. Goldman didn't present it as speculation. He framed it as a choice, one that kept workers without pay and travelers stuck in hours-long lines. Then he delivered the point that tied everything together. The only thing standing between TSA employees getting paid and airports returning to normal was a decision from the top. And still, no clear acknowledgement came. Throughout the hearing, Goldman reinforced that message, pointing to reports and footage that raised questions about what ICE officers were actually doing in airports, while officials themselves struggled to explain the plan. At one point, even a Department of Homeland Security representative reportedly admitted uncertainty about the operation. That only deepened the concern, because it suggested this wasn't a carefully structured policy, but something implemented without a clear roadmap. By the end, the issue wasn't just about airport delays or staffing shortages. It became about leadership, priorities, and who ultimately bears responsibility when solutions are available but not taken. Now that everything has been laid out publicly, the question remains: when funding decisions come up again, will action finally match the urgency that millions of travelers and workers have already felt?